Princess Alara of the Luminar Kingdom had always been known as a gentle soul, someone who carried kindness the same way others carried jewelry, effortlessly and without thought. Her people admired her because she understood their worries, listened to their hopes, and never let her royal title pull her away from the real world. Yet even with all her grace and wisdom, there were moments when she felt the world around her move too fast, and she struggled to keep up with expectations that were far larger than her own wishes. For several months, whispers echoed through the palace corridors that a major announcement was coming. Servants glanced at each other with excitement. Courtiers stood straighter, hoping to be seen at the right moment. Advisors hurried through the halls with scrolls tucked under their arms. Even the royal cooks prepared special dishes, unsure but hopeful that a celebration might be near. Everyone waited. Everyone wondered. Finally, one bright morning, the king and queen gathered the palace in the great hall. Sunshine streamed through tall windows of colored glass, painting soft shades across the marble floor. Alara stood beside her parents, her hands clasped neatly in front of her. She wore a pleasant smile, one she had practiced many times, but inside her mind felt unsettled. The king's voice boomed proudly as he made the announcement the entire kingdom had been waiting for. Princess Alara was to marry Prince Arvion, heir to the neighboring kingdom of Viridia. The marriage would unite two great lands, create peace for generations, and strengthen both kingdoms. The moment the announcement left the king's lips, the entire hall erupted in applause. Familiar faces lit up with joy. Some people cried with happiness. Others cheered and spoke of grand festivities that would soon take place. Alara smiled as expected, but deep inside her heart tightened. She knew Prince Arvion well enough to see that he was intelligent, graceful, in public, and ambitious. He was respected by many and admired by even more. But something always felt distant about him, as if his mind belonged not to the present but to the future he imagined for himself. Alara had never disliked him, yet she had never felt truly connected to him. Their conversations were polite, careful, and filled with rehearsed lines rather than honest feelings. As the news spread across the region, the kingdom of Luminar came alive with excitement. Flags were raised. Flowers were hung around the palace gates. Market squares filled with laughter as people prepared for the royal wedding. For the citizens, this union meant security and progress. For the palace, it meant strengthening political ties. But for Alara, it meant stepping into a life shaped by duty. She tried repeatedly to convince herself this was the right path, that she needed to follow tradition and fulfill her responsibilities. Every morning, she looked at the growing decorations and tried to believe in the future being prepared for her. But every evening, she found herself alone in the palace gardens, walking in circles under the lantern light, wondering why her heart felt so heavy. Her closest maid, Liana, noticed the change in her. One night, Liana approached her gently and asked if something was troubling her. Alara only smiled softly and shook her head. She was not ready to speak her worries out loud. Even she did not fully understand them yet. She only knew that something inside her did not feel right. Days turned into weeks, and wedding preparations continued at an unstoppable pace. Royal designers worked tirelessly to craft her gown, weaving threads of silver and gold into delicate patterns. Musicians rehearsed songs that would be played during the ceremony. Chefs planned an enormous feast. Invitations were carried to neighboring lands, reaching nobles, scholars, and diplomats. Amid all this, news arrived that a group of elite human warriors from the northern border were scheduled to visit Luminar for the wedding week. They were known for their skill, discipline, and loyalty. These warriors traveled across lands to ensure safety during major events. Their presence brought reassurance to both kingdoms. Servants buzzed with excitement at their arrival. They spoke of the warriors' strength, their courage, and the stories told about them. Alara listened quietly to their chatter but did not think much of it. Warriors had visited before, and they carried themselves with professionalism and respect. She assumed this group would be no different. Despite the celebrations, Alara's uneasiness only grew stronger. She often found herself staring out from her tower window, watching the people celebrate something she wasn't sure she desired. She wondered if her life was truly hers, or if she was simply walking along a path laid out by others long ago. Her mother, the queen, noticed her daughter's growing silence, and offered comforting words. She reminded Alara that many royal marriages began without love, yet grew into strong partnerships over time. Her father assured her that this union was for the good of the kingdom and that she would find happiness along the way. Alara listened respectfully, but the quiet voice inside her refused to disappear. On one particular afternoon, while the palace buzzed with planners and advisors, Alara wandered toward the inner courtyard for a moment of peace. A soft breeze brushed across her face as she walked past the fountain. The water danced in the sunlight, forming tiny rainbows that shimmered with every ripple. She sat on a stone bench, closed her eyes, and took a gentle breath. She wished, just for a moment, that she could choose a path that belonged entirely to her. That same afternoon, the announcement came that the human warriors had reached the outer gates. The palace guards hurried to prepare a proper welcome. Advisors gathered to greet the group officially. Footsteps echoed through the hallways as everyone rushed to their positions. Alara remained seated in the courtyard, unaware that her life was already turning toward an unexpected direction. She opened her eyes slowly, noticing a flock of birds flying across the sky. Their wings moved freely, confidently, without hesitation. She admired them for their ease, their ability to choose where they wished to go. For a brief moment, she wondered if she would ever feel that kind of freedom. Little did she know, the seeds of change had already been planted. The warriors entered the palace, their boots steady and their expressions calm. They carried themselves with quiet discipline, each step synchronized with the next. They were escorted to their quarters and given a tour of the palace grounds. Alara had no idea that among them was a man who would shift the course of her carefully planned life. The celebration, the preparation, and the expectations all continued. But something new was about to begin, something that would challenge everything Princess Alara thought she knew about duty, choice, and her own heart. She would soon learn that even the most carefully arranged future could be transformed by a single unexpected encounter. Princess Alara woke the next morning with the same mix of excitement and worry that had followed her for weeks. The palace halls were already filled with movement. Servants rushed around with baskets of flowers, guards polished their armor, and the royal advisors carried long scrolls discussing the schedule for the day. Everything was planned to perfection because the wedding was drawing near, and the arrival of the human warriors added even more importance to the atmosphere. The warriors had come a long way from the northern border, and their arrival was considered a great honor. People said they were disciplined, brave, and fiercely loyal to their mission. They were trained to protect royal families during important events. And although Luminor was already a safe kingdom, the presence of these warriors made the public feel even more secure. Alara had heard the news, but she had not yet seen the warriors. Since morning, she had been busy meeting the tailors who were working on her wedding gown. They showed her different cloth pieces, each shining under the sunlight with tiny threads of silver. She tried her best to smile and appreciate their work, but her thoughts kept drifting elsewhere. She felt as if something important was waiting for her, just beyond her understanding. In the afternoon, she finally decided to walk around the palace to clear her mind. She often found calmness in exploring the quieter areas of the castle. As she stepped outside, she breathed in the fresh scent of blooming flowers. Birds sang nearby as if trying to lift her spirits. She followed a stone pathway that led to the East Garden, a place she loved because it was usually peaceful. Just as she turned a corner near the rose bushes, she suddenly stopped. A tall man with broad shoulders stood not far from her, inspecting the structure of a nearby wall. He wore simple warrior armor, nothing extravagant, yet he carried a sense of strength that made him stand out. His dark hair fell neatly to the side, and his expression was calm but alert, as if he noticed every small detail around him. He had not seen her yet, so she took a moment to observe him. There were other warriors in the courtyard, but something about this one drew her attention. He didn't seem to be showing off or trying to impress anyone. Instead, he seemed deeply focused on his task, moving with quiet confidence. Suddenly, he turned, and their eyes met. Alara felt her breath hitch for a moment, surprised by the directness of his gaze. He didn't look startled, nor did he rush to bow quickly like most people did when they saw her. Instead, he gave a respectful but steady nod. "Your Highness," he said in a calm, grounded voice, My apologies if I am standing in your way. Lara shook her head lightly. You're not in my way. I was simply walking through the garden. Stepped aside politely. I should be more careful. We are inspecting the palace grounds to make sure everything is safe for the upcoming ceremony. I'm Rowan Hale, leader of the Northern Border Unit. His tone was polite, but not overly formal. It felt honest, natural. That alone surprised her. I'm pleased to meet you, Rowan Hale, she replied softly. You and your team have traveled a long distance. I hope the palace has made you comfortable. It has, Your Highness, he said. And we are honored to serve. Alara expected him to look away or end the conversation quickly, but he didn't. He remained steady, not nervous, not overly confident, just present. For a moment, she felt an unusual sense of ease, as if she didn't have to pretend anything around him. She glanced at the wall he had been inspecting. Is everything in order? Yes, Rowan said. Your palace is well protected. But we inspect carefully, because even a small detail can matter. The way he spoke simple, honest, without flowery words, felt refreshing to Alara. She found herself smiling. Not the practiced smile she used for formal events, but a real one. Seeing her expression soften, Rowan relaxed slightly too. Before either of them could say more, one of the palace guards hurried over. Your Highness, the Queen is asking for you. There are decisions to finalize for the ceremony. Alara nodded politely. I'll go at once. Rowan bowed respectfully, and she turned to leave. But as she walked away, she found herself glancing back. He was already examining the wall again, focused and calm. She did not know why, but meeting him left a small spark of curiosity inside her. It felt like something peaceful had brushed against her heart for the first time in weeks. The next few days passed with unexpected moments that slowly drew Alara and Rowan closer. Although they were never alone for long, small encounters kept happening accidentally, yet naturally. One morning, while Alara practiced walking in her ceremonial gown, she tripped slightly on the long edge of the fabric. Before she lost balance, a hand reached out to help her. She looked up and found Rowan standing beside her. You should shorten the front by an inch, he said gently. It will allow you to walk easier. Alara blinked in surprise. You know about gowns? I know about movement, he replied with a faint smile. Anything that restricts movement can become a problem. His simple logic made her laugh softly, and the sound seemed to surprise him. For a moment, the tension that had built inside her over the weeks felt lighter. Another day, she saw him in the courtyard training with his team. His movements were precise, focused, and graceful in their own powerful way. He commanded respect without shouting or forcing authority. He led by example, not fear. Watching him made her realize that strength didn't always come from loud voices or grand gestures. Sometimes it came from quiet discipline. Whenever Rowan saw her, he greeted her with polite respect, never crossing boundaries. But he also never treated her like someone fragile. He spoke to her sincerely, something rare in the palace where everyone chose their words carefully. Alara started looking forward to the small conversations they shared. She would ask him about his travels, and he would tell her stories of the mountains, the forests, and the long roads his team traveled. He never exaggerated or tried to impress her. He simply shared the truth of what he had seen and learned. One afternoon she asked, Do you ever feel afraid? Rowan paused for a moment. Everyone feels afraid, Your Highness. The important part is whether you let fear control your choices. His words touched her more deeply than he probably realized. For days she had been silently fighting her own fear, the fear of choosing a life she didn't truly want. Hearing him speak so honestly made her feel understood, even though he had no idea what she was struggling with. Their conversations remained short but meaningful, and with each passing day, the uneasy feeling inside Alara shifted into something different, something soft, warm, and unfamiliar. She tried not to think too much about it. She tried to focus on her upcoming wedding, on her duties, on her responsibilities, but every time she saw Rowan, something inside her stirred, reminding her of a truth she didn't yet have the courage to face. The connection between them grew quietly, naturally, without either of them intending it. It was like a seed planted by fate the moment their eyes met in the garden. Alara didn't yet understand what this feeling meant. Rowan didn't either. but both of them sensed that something important had begun. Neither knew how drastically their paths were about to change. Princess Alara woke the next morning with a mind full of thoughts she could not easily explain. The palace was brighter than usual, decorated with fresh banners and scented flowers brought in for the wedding week. Musicians practiced in the hallways. Servants hurried back and forth carrying trays and fabrics. Everyone seemed excited, everyone except her. She still smiled politely whenever someone spoke to her. But inside she felt like she was standing in the middle of a storm only she could see. The quiet encounters she had shared with Rowan over the past few days kept returning to her mind. She had tried to push them away, reminding herself that she was soon to marry Prince Arvian. But the more she tried to ignore those moments, the clearer they became. Rowan's steady voice, his honest eyes, and the calm presence he carried seemed to follow her everywhere she went. Alara had never met someone who spoke to her without pretending, without worrying about whether his words would impress or disappoint her. Rowan treated her as a person first, not a symbol, not a princess, locked in duty. That simple difference had begun to open a door inside her heart, a door she didn't know had been closed for so long. By midday, the palace was full of visitors from both kingdoms. Diplomats arrived with gifts. Nobles in elegant clothing greeted each other in the corridors. The air buzzed with conversations about alliances, celebrations, and the future of both lands. Alara moved gracefully among the guests, greeting each person with the gentle warmth expected of her. But every time someone mentioned the wedding, her smile felt heavier. She felt like she was walking deeper into a life that belonged to the kingdom, not to her. Prince Arvian arrived later in the afternoon. He looked handsome and confident, dressed in green and gold colors of his kingdom. Everyone in the room bowed as he approached her. He took her hand and gave a polite smile. "Alara," he said, "everything is nearly ready. Our people are thrilled about our union." "Yes," she replied softly. "It will be a memorable event." Arvian nodded proudly. "Together, we will lead our kingdoms into a new age." His words sounded right, but they slid over her heart without touching it. She noticed that he never asked how she felt, never wondered whether she was overwhelmed or tired. His focus was always on the future, the alliance, and the political benefits their marriage would bring. Not once had he asked about her dreams. Not once had he seen her as a person, only as a part of his grand plan. As the crowd formed around them, Alara felt a sudden need to escape. She quietly excused herself, claiming she needed fresh air. No one questioned her. They were too busy discussing the wedding. She walked toward the quiet west corridor, where sunlight filtered through long windows and painted soft golden patterns on the stone floor. The silence felt comforting after the noise of the reception. When she reached the end of the hallway, she stepped out into the open garden. The gentle wind brushed her face. Flowers swayed lightly. The sky stretched wide above her, calm and endless. She closed her eyes for a moment, trying to steady her thoughts. When she opened them again, she noticed Rowan standing near the far end of the garden, speaking to two members of his team. They seemed to be discussing patrol schedules. Alara had not expected to see him there, and for a moment she hesitated. But Rowan spotted her and gave a small, respectful nod before dismissing his men. He walked toward her with the same steady calmness she had come to recognize. "Your Highness," he said, "are you all right?" Alara tried to smile. "Yes, I just needed some quiet." Rowan studied her carefully, but not in a way that felt intrusive. He didn't see a princess in that moment. He saw a person struggling. "Sometimes crowded rooms take more strength than battles," he said gently. Alara let out a soft breath. "You understand that better than most." Arohan didn't respond immediately. Instead, he waited, giving her space to speak if she wished. That small patience felt like a gift. "Finally," she said, "people keep telling me this wedding will bring peace. They speak of alliances and treaties. They tell me how important this union is." She paused, looking at the flowers near her feet. "But no one asks what I feel. Not even once." Rowan's expression softened. "Have you told anyone?" Alara shook her head. "I don't think they would understand. It feels like my life has been decided for me." There was a long silence. Rowan didn't try to offer simple answers or empty assurances. When he finally spoke, his words held quiet wisdom. Even when a path is chosen for you, he said, you still have the right to understand it. You still have the right to question whether it is truly yours. Ilara looked up at him, surprised by how naturally he understood her struggle. Rowan continued, you carry a great responsibility, princess. But responsibility should not take away your voice. His words touched her deeply. She felt the tightness in her chest loosen just a little. Thank you, she whispered. You speak honestly. Most people do not. Rowan gave a small smile. I found that honesty is easier when you expect nothing in return. Lara held his gaze for a moment. It was quiet, calm, and strangely comforting. The longer she looked into his eyes, the more she noticed something gentle in them, something that felt steady and safe. Suddenly, footsteps echoed from the garden entrance. Both turned to see Prince Arvion approaching with 2 advisors. Ilara stepped back automatically, and Rowan immediately bowed with perfect discipline. Arvion's eyes flicked toward Rowan briefly before settling on Ilara. There you are. Everyone is waiting for you. We must finalize the seating arrangements. Ilara nodded politely, but before she followed Arvion, she glanced once more at Rowan. He bowed again, his expression unreadable, but respectful. As she walked away with Arvion, the distance between her and Rowan felt heavier than it should. She tried to focus on the prince's words, but she couldn't stop thinking about the conversation she had just shared. The next few days brought even more responsibilities. Meetings, rehearsals, preparations, everywhere she looked. Lara saw expectations layered like walls around her. But beneath those expectations, something else was growing quietly, secretly, inside her heart. A feeling she could no longer pretend she didn't understand. She found comfort in Rowan's presence, even when he was at a distance. She noticed him during patrols, observed the way he trained his team, and silently admired his calm strength. She didn't need to speak to him every time. Just knowing he was nearby brought her a strange kind of peace. Rohan, too, found himself watching the princess more often than he intended. He noticed when her smile looked tired. He noticed when she walked alone, deep in thought. He respected her position, but he couldn't ignore the growing concern he felt for her. One evening, before sunset, Ilara stood on the palace balcony overlooking the city. The horizon glowed with soft orange and pink. She rested her hands on the railing and allowed herself to breathe freely. She didn't hear Rowan at first, but she sensed someone behind her. When she turned, she found him standing respectfully a few steps away. I didn't mean to disturb you, he said gently. You're not, she replied. I just needed a moment away from everything. Rowan stepped closer, not too close. Just enough to show he was willing to listen. You carry so much without complaint, he said. But even the strongest hearts need rest. Lara's eyes softened. No one had ever spoken to her like that. No one had ever acknowledged her struggles so simply, so sincerely. In that quiet moment, something shifted. Ilara felt it. Rowan felt it. Neither of them said anything, but the air between them seemed to hum with unspoken truth. It wasn't love, not yet, but it was something real, something undeniable. As the sky darkened and the first stars appeared, Ilara realized she was facing a truth she could no longer ignore. Her heart was changing, and the wedding was only days away. Princess Ilara woke the next morning feeling the weight of a choice she had not yet dared to make. The palace was full of excitement because the wedding was now only a few days away. Everyone around her moved quickly, working on decorations, schedules, and last-minute details. The air smelled of fresh flowers and polished wood. Every corner of the palace shimmered with preparation. But Ilara felt disconnected from all of it, like she was watching someone else's life unfold from a distance. The quiet understanding she had found with Rowan over the last few days had changed something inside her. She could no longer pretend that the wedding brought her happiness. She could no longer hide the truth from herself. Every time she saw Prince Arvion, she felt her heart become heavier. Every time she saw Rowan even for a brief moment, she felt a small spark of peace inside her chest. That contrast scared her. As she walked through the palace corridors, guests bowed to her, smiling warmly. They spoke of the bright future ahead, of unity, of celebration. She responded politely, as expected. But her thoughts kept drifting back to Rowan's words, words that had gently shaken the walls she had built around her heart. By midday, the queen called Alara to her private chamber. The queen looked graceful as always, dressed in soft shades of gold. She waited until the room was empty before she spoke. "Alara, my dear," she said, her voice gentle, "you seem troubled." "I have noticed it for days." Alara lowered her eyes. She tried to form the right words, but her thoughts tangled together. I don't know if I'm ready for this wedding," she whispered. The queen watched her carefully, her expression softening. "That is a heavy doubt to carry this close to the ceremony." Alara felt her throat tighten. "I have tried to push the feeling away. I have tried to be the princess everyone expects me to be. But my heart is not calm." The queen gently touched her daughter's hand. "You must not confuse duty with silence, Alara. You are allowed to question your path." Alara looked up with surprised eyes. She had expected her mother to remind her of her responsibilities, not offer her understanding. "When I married your father," the queen continued, "I was afraid too. But I knew my heart would find a home in that union. If I had felt the doubt you feel now, I would have listened to it." Alara blinked, a mix of relief and confusion filling her chest. "Do you feel this doubt because of Arvian?" her mother asked softly, "or because of someone else?" Alara froze. Her silence answered the question. The queen did not look angry or disappointed. Instead, she sighed gently and said, "The heart is a delicate thing. It follows its own path, not the plans we draw for it." Tears filled Elaire's eyes, not out of sadness, but from the sudden release of a burden she had been carrying alone. "But the kingdoms," Alara whispered. "The alliance. There are always other ways to build peace," her mother said. "But there is only one way to lose yourself by ignoring your own voice." Alara nodded slowly, overwhelmed by her mother's compassion. For the first time, she allowed herself to speak the truth she had kept hidden. "I don't know what my future holds," she said softly, "but I know it should not begin with a lie." The queen embraced her gently. "Whatever you choose, I will stand beside you." That single sentence became the anchor Alara needed. Later in the afternoon, as preparations continued, Rowan passed through the hallway with his team. His eyes met Elara's for a brief moment. He bowed politely, but in that short glance, Alara saw something honest concern, calmness, and a quiet strength she had come to rely on. She realized then that she needed to speak to him, not to confess anything, not to break rules, but simply to find clarity. Rowan had a way of grounding her thoughts, helping her see through the fog of pressure surrounding her. She waited until evening, when the palace grew quieter and the sky outside began to turn soft shades of purple and rose. Lanterns flickered gently against the walls. The sound of distant music floated softly through the windows. Alara made her way to the courtyard where she had first met Rowan. The garden felt peaceful, touched by the glow of lamps placed along the stone paths. She soon spotted him standing alone near the fountain, reviewing a set of patrol notes. Rowan looked up as she approached. His expression shifted quickly from focused to concerned. "Your Highness," he said softly, "you seem troubled again." Alara took a slow breath. "I needed to talk to someone who speaks honestly." Rowan set the papers aside. "I am here." Alara hesitated for a moment, then asked, "Do you believe every path is chosen for us? Or do you believe we choose our own path?" Rowan studied her carefully. "I believe paths change," he said, "even the ones that seem unmovable. Life always gives us moments where we must decide who we are." Alara felt something settle inside her chest, like a final piece falling into place. "Rowan," she said quietly, "thank you. You have helped me understand things I could not understand alone." He didn't fully know what she meant, but he sensed the seriousness in her voice. "Whatever is weighing on you," he said gently, "you do not have to carry it alone." Lara's eyes softened. "I know." There was a brief silence. The wind brushed lightly through the garden, carrying the soft scent of jasmine. The moment felt fragile, important. Rowan cleared his throat lightly, trying to steady his voice. "Is there anything else you wish to tell me?" Alara looked at him for a long time. She wanted to say many things, but she also understood the boundaries of his duty and her own position. So she said the only words that felt right. You have reminded me that I have a voice, she whispered, and that I must use it. Rowan held her gaze, and in his eyes she found understanding, deep, honest understanding. He nodded, then, whatever choice you make, I hope it brings you peace. Lara smiled weakly. Thank you, Rowan. She turned to leave, but before she walked away, Rowan spoke again, his voice steady but quiet. For what it's worth, he said, you are stronger than you believe. Alara paused, letting the words settle into her heart. That night, long after the lights in the palace dimmed, Lara sat alone in her room, staring at her wedding dress hanging near the window. It shimmered beautifully, but it felt distant, like it belonged to a future she no longer wished to step into. She closed her eyes. Tomorrow was the rehearsal. The wedding was almost here, and she knew what she had to do. Her choice might shock everyone. It might change the future of both kingdoms. It might even change the course of her own life forever. But she would not walk into the ceremony with a silent heart. She would speak. Whatever happened next, she would face it with truth. The day after the great conflict, the entire kingdom felt different. The sky seemed clearer, the air softer, and the people calmer. It was as if a heavy weight that had been sitting silently on every heart had finally lifted. The news of the princess's courage and the warrior's loyalty had spread across the land like a warm wind. Wherever their names were spoken, people smiled with pride and hope. Princess Alara woke up early that morning. She opened the tall golden windows of her room and looked outside. For the first time in many days, she felt peace move through her chest like a slow, gentle river. She thought about everything that had happened, the halted wedding, the attack on the kingdom, the shadow creature, the long fight, the brave decision to stand by Aaron instead of running away. Life had changed so much, and she knew that change would not stop now, in the garden below. She saw healers guiding injured soldiers to rest under the bright trees. Some were talking softly, some were laughing again, and some were simply enjoying the sunlight. Alara's eyes softened. These were her people, and she owed them not only safety, but also a future. Full of fairness and understanding, she left her room and walked through the halls. Servants and guards bowed respectfully, but their eyes held warmth, not fear. It was the first time she felt truly connected to them. She reached the main courtyard where Aaron was standing, speaking to some soldiers who had fought with him. He looked tired but happy. When he noticed her, he smiled, the kind of smile that carried quiet gratitude. Alara joined them, and the soldiers stepped back politely. Aaron looked at her with a gentle expression. "Are you feeling better?" He asked. "Yes," she replied. "Thanks to you and everyone who protected the kingdom." Aaron shook his head humbly. "We all protected it. You most of all." She appreciated his words, but knew there was still much to do. The kingdom had survived, but its future needed careful rebuilding. Later that morning, the king called for a gathering in the main hall. The hall was decorated with banners, soft candles, and long tables filled with food for the people who had worked through the night. Hundreds of citizens filled the space, waiting for the royal family to speak. The atmosphere was filled with hope. The king stepped forward wearing a simple robe instead of grand ceremonial clothing. His voice was calm when he addressed the people. "Our kingdom faced great danger," he began. "And yet we stand here together, stronger than before. Today, we honor those who protected us, those who stood with truth, and those who showed the courage to change our future." He turned toward Alara, and her heart beat a little faster. "My daughter," he said, "made a choice that stopped us from walking into a mistake. Her voice, her courage, and her honesty saved not just herself, but all of us." The hall erupted into warm applause. Alara felt her cheeks grow warm, but she stood tall. Then the king looked toward Aaron, and this human warrior showed us the true meaning of loyalty. When darkness rose against us, he did not run. He fought for our kingdom as if it were his own. More applause filled the large hall. Aaron bowed respectfully. The king raised his hand to silence the room. "But the most important lesson we have learned," continued, "is that strength does not come from old rules or cold traditions. It comes from unity, from kindness, from understanding. and from choosing what is right, even when it is difficult. Ilara felt a wave of emotion rise in her chest. She realized this moment was bigger than any royal ceremony. Her father was finally seeing what she had seen all along: the need for change. When the king finished his speech, he placed his hand gently on Ilara's shoulder and whispered, "I am proud of you." It was a simple sentence, but it filled her heart with warmth. After the gathering, people moved outside to enjoy the celebration. Music filled the courtyards, children ran through the gardens laughing, and soldiers shared stories of bravery. The kingdom was healing. Ilara and Aaron walked through the gardens together. Neither spoke for a while. The soft wind moved through the leaves, carrying the scent of fresh flowers. Finally, Aaron looked at her. "You really changed everything yesterday." Lara smiled softly. "Not alone. You helped me see things clearly." Aaron glanced toward the sky. "I never wanted to be the reason for trouble." "You weren't," she assured him. "You helped protect everyone. And you reminded me that courage isn't just for warriors. Sometimes it's in speaking the truth." He looked thoughtful. "What happens now?" She had been thinking about that too. "We rebuild," she said. "We create new rules that give people more freedom. We make the kingdom safer. And we decide the future with our hearts, not just old traditions." Aaron studied her face. "And your future? What do you want it to be?" Ilara paused, feeling her heartbeat again, strong and steady. For so long, she had followed the expectations of others. Now she wanted to follow her own. "I want a future where I can choose my own path," she said, "where I can help the kingdom grow, and where I can walk beside people I trust." Aaron understood the meaning behind her words, but he didn't rush. He simply smiled and said, "Whatever path you choose, you'll walk it with strength." Later that afternoon, Ilara visited the tower where the shadow creature had emerged. It had turned silent and cool again. She looked at the carved stone walls that once vibrated with dark energy. Standing there reminded her of how close they had come to losing everything. But it also reminded her of the power inside every person, the power to change destiny with a single brave decision. She placed her hand on the cold stone and whispered, "This ends here." From that day on, the tower remained untouched, but it no longer held fear. It became a symbol of the kingdom's turning point. Weeks passed, and the kingdom recovered fully. New laws were written, laws that treated all citizens with fairness and respected their choices. The gates of the palace opened more often, allowing the people to share ideas and concerns. The walls between the royal family and the citizens slowly faded. Ilara worked tirelessly each day, meeting with council members, speaking with villagers, and making sure everyone felt heard. Her kindness left a strong impression on the entire kingdom. Aaron, too, found a new place in the castle. He trained the royal guards, helped improve the kingdom's defenses, and became a trusted advisor. People looked up to him not just as a warrior, but as a symbol of unity between worlds. Together, Ilara and Aaron built a quiet but powerful friendship. Their bond was based on respect, trust, and the experiences they had shared. Whenever Ilara felt overwhelmed, Aaron would offer calm guidance. And whenever Aaron felt unsure about his place, Ilara reminded him how important he was to the future of the kingdom. One evening, as the sun set behind the distant mountains, painting the sky with orange and soft pink, Ilara stood on the tallest balcony of the castle. Aaron joined her quietly. "The kingdom looks peaceful," he said. "It does," she replied. "And it feels peaceful too." Aaron leaned on the railing. "Do you ever think about the moment you stopped the wedding?" Ilara laughed lightly. "Every day. It was frightening, but it was the first time I truly followed my heart." He nodded. "It changed everything." "Yes," she said softly, "and it was the beginning of a better future." They stood in silence for a long moment, watching the last of the sunlight fade. The future was still unwritten, but they were no longer afraid. They had faced darkness and come out stronger. The kingdom had survived, and the bonds of trust between them were unbreakable. As the stars began to appear, Ilara looked at Aaron with a peaceful smile. "Whatever comes next," she said, "we will face it together." And with that promise, The new chapter of their kingdom began one built not on fear or old traditions, but on courage, unity, and the choices of two hearts that refused to give up on hope.